Why would it be usher?
Yago, you should know that this is how Shmuley keeps up to date. He calls like 2 weeks later and he's like, "What's with that guy with the books?"
So what's your commission?
I don't, it's funny. I was thinking about doing it, but then how people, stock analysts officially are not allowed to buy stocks because they're in it. So I'm thinking, how can I
blind trust? Blind trust.
Right. So how can I go and I'm answering all these shilas? I have my own negiyas, so I figured I'm not doing it. Anyway, whatever. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with that. Anyway, okay. That was the pregame, no pun intended, to the daf. Okay, so Zogimara, we start with the last two lines. Where do we get up to? To the bottom, right? Yeah. Umasaknin S, and now we're on to Amud Aleph. Kulkule Amayim Shebeshus Rabim. So he said that on Sarche Rabim is allowed. So things that, water sources that belong to the public, so you're allowed to clean them out from all the dirt and all the garbage. Right? So Gemara says chatita means you're just clearing it out. You're not doing any digging. But chafira lo, you're not allowed to dig. Right? It's mashma that even for the public, you're only allowed to take out all the junk that fell into the stream or whatever it is, like the soda cans and the soda bottles and all that type of stuff and the branches, but you can't re-dig it. So Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rav Yochanan, that's only when the Rabbim doesn't need them. But if the public needs you to dig out these what do you call it? Streams, then or whatever these bodies of water are, then you would be allowed to, because tzarchei Rabbim, we said you're allowed to do malacha, but tzarchei Rabbim. So I'm going to ask, is that really true that if the public needs you to dig it out, then is it mutter? Vatanya, you're allowed to clear out. Again, chaytitin means to clear out. Chafira means to dig out. So you're allowed to clean them out if it belongs to a yachid. So Rabbi, it goes without saying that you can do the public. But you're not allowed to dig any body of water for the Rabbim. It goes without saying that you can't do the yachid. My love, isn't this talking about where the Rabbim needs you to dig it out? Yet the Gemara says that you're not allowed to dig even for the Rabbim. So now we have a stira, right? The Mishnah is mashma, or Rav Yaakov, Shem Rav Yochanan is mashma that for if the Rabbim needs it, you're actually allowed to dig it out. And we have a brisa that says you're never allowed to dig out for the Rabbim. So when it answers Loi b'she'en Rabbim tzrichen lehen, we're talking about whether it's for the public, but the public doesn't really need it. So if that's the case, then you're only allowed to clear it out. You're not allowed to dig it out. So the Gemara says the kavasok yochid. That means there has to be the same case by a yochid. Means she'en yochid sarach lehem. Then he has to be talking about where the yochid doesn't need it. I mean, again, we have two situations here. Two bodies of water. One belongs to a yochid. One belongs to a rabbin. Right. So they have to both be the same scenario, where either the yochid and the rabbin need the water, or the yochid and the rabbin don't need the water. So we're saying now that it's talking about where it's for the public, but the public doesn't need the water. Right? So the Gemara says that means by yochid also doesn't need the water. So if the yochid doesn't need the water, the kavaseka yochid shen yochid tzarach lem chatita mishari, then is it even if the yochid doesn't need the water, is it even mutter to clear out all the junk that fell in? Mishari batanya barish shichan of aretz shel yochid kainsin mayim l'saychan. You're allowed to put water into it, but you're not allowed to clear it out. And you're not allowed to smooth the cracks, meaning if there's cracks if it's a barrel or something and there's cracks in it, so it's leaking, so you're not allowed to put mud on there. But if it belongs to the public, then you are allowed to do these things. So then it has to be where the yochid needs it. If that's the case, the guy would say Gabri Rabim, and it must be where the public needs it. So if the public actually needs this water, is it also to dig? You're You put in the water and you can clean it out. But you can't you don't smooth it out. And you don't clear into it, right? Which is interesting because you're supposed to really clear out of it, not into it. Right? Not pashut exactly what this means. And you can't smear it with mud, but for the public, then you can. Right? So basically, we have a big steerer here. What are you allowed to do for the public, and what are you allowed to do for the private? So Gemara says, so bottom line is now we have a kasha from the first price. So bottom line of what's going on here. So the Gemara answers, this is how you have to say pshat. You're allowed to clean out any body of water that belongs to the yachid, but only b'sheyachid tzarech them, only when the yachid needs them. Ve'ein tzarech laimar b'shel rabim, and it goes without saying that if the public needs them, kisher rabim tzarech them, when the rabim needs it, afilu chafira mutter, then it's even mutter to dig. Ve'ein chay from bar shel rabim b'shein rabim tzarech them, but you're not allowed to dig out a bar and a shiach and a ma'ara for the public when the public doesn't need them. Ve'ein tzarech laimar shel yachid, and it goes without saying that a yachid, t'chiyen yachid tzarech lehem, afilu chatita nami hasa, because when a yachid doesn't need the water, then you're not even allowed to clear it out. Okay, so Amar Ravashi, Masnisa Nabi Deikar, our mission is also Meduik Lagatik Tani Oisim called Tzarchei Rabim. Says you're allowed to do all Tzarchei Rabim. Kol Lasuye Mai. What's kol coming to include? Lav Lasuye Chafira. Isn't it coming to include digging? That if you need to actually dig in order for the public to have access to water, then you'd be allowed to. Okay, let's just stop here for a second, just because that was a whole lot of stuff there. The Baskanas Hadvarim is that if it's for private and the private person needs that body of water to be cleaned out in order to access water, so you're allowed to clean it out on chol hamoed, right? But that's it. You're never allowed to dig because that's too much of a malacha for the private. For the public, if the public actually needs the water, not only are you allowed to clean it out, you're even allowed to dig it out, right? But when they don't need it, if the public doesn't need the water right now, but it's just a regular public source of water, then you could clean it out, but you can't dig it out. Okay,
what's the definition of need?
What's the definition of need? That means they mamish need the water right now. That's the way I understand it. Meaning, as opposed to how do you say it? As opposed to the water, you just need the water to be accessed, but you don't necessarily need it right now. That's why
if you have one well, but the Rabbim, it's too big for the one well. They had an influx of people before Yom Tov, right? They were Ola Regel or something like that, and then there's too many people over there.
Oh, so then I think that would be a need right then, no?
Right. So, but one well wouldn't be enough, you're saying. So that would be a tzarech. Not that they have to wait longer and such.
I don't know. You mean what happens if they just have to wait another 5 minutes? I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. Is there a shear of tzarech? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anybody know anything about that?
I don't, but I have a question. Don't we have a concept that you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov extra because maybe guests are going to come?
Yes.
So why can't you have a thing? I don't need so much water now, but I need a little bit. But I'm digging it because maybe. Why can't you have
my question?
That same concept? Huh?
That was around my question. Yeah. The definition of tzarech is the question.
You mean you're talking about like with the cooking? You want to make a harama and cook a lot during the day in case hoil.
Yeah. Why can't you say the same thing?
Right.
What's the difference?
Here. No, because and a chanami, maybe that is cool. Who says it's not the case? We just don't know what exactly the application is of Rabim Tzrichel now. I had a hard time understanding what it means. Rabim needs it, and Rabim Tzrichel meaning what's meaning. Does the Rabim need it or they do not need it?
Maybe they'll need it. Why can't you say maybe they'll need it? Right now they don't need it, but maybe they'll need it.
Okay, so that's why I understand it, but I'm not sure I understand it. Either they need it or they don't need it. Is there enough water? Is there not?
You're having guests or you're not having guests. Same thing. Maybe I'll find somebody in shul. I'll bring them home. Maybe right now, no.
Okay, so then all right. I don't know.
It's a little bit different. With Yom Tov, you're extending a heter. Here, you're being mevatel an isser.
Well, it's still an isser to cook if it's not a tzarech Yom Tov. No,
The ba'atzam, it's mutter to cook. We add on to we make it usser. Ba'atzam, it's mutter to cook. The malacha is mutter. We make it usser if you don't need it. But you're really just extending a heter. Here, it's usser to do anything in Shemitah for your field. We make it mutter if, under certain circumstances, it's mutter. So you're not extending
Well, no,
that
we're talking about
saying,
hamoed here. We're talking about hamoed, yeah. Well, now we had this fight already once, whether we're talking about hamoed.
Yeah, but hamoed is the same thing in this case. Hamoed, everything's usser. It's not mutter.
Right. I hear. So I'm not sure. Maybe we'll see later on in the Masechta exactly how you define the tzarech. Either way, so the Gemara wants to say that that's meduyik from our Mishnah. So 4 lines up from the wide lines. We say, the Mishnah is coming to include something else. You're allowed to go out on chol. Lakavetz means from the word kites, from thorns, that you're allowed to go clear the streets from the thorns. Ulasakin as a rechayves, and to fix the streets, and also types of streets. Velomed as a mikvahs, and to measure the mikvahs to make sure there's no leaks. Any mikvah that doesn't have 40 sa. So what you do is you push the water into it until you fill it up, right? That's a din in Hilchos Mikvahs, that as long as the water runs around along the ground, 4 amas on the ground, then that makes it as if it's rainwater, and then that makes the mikvah kosher. As long as you can have 3. How does it go? 3 low. It can't be more than a majority. I don't remember what the shir is. Okay.
So it can't be 3 lug at a time. No.
Can't be right. 3 lug. It's at a time or all together.
At a time.
It has to be a majority.
Once it's batul.
Yeah. Okay, good. So and from where do you know now? This is this next line of Gemara a little scary. And if they didn't go out to do this on Chol, all the blood that spilled on the streets, meaning if they didn't fix the streets, right? Rashi says because of the thorns. It's as if the shluchei bezdin who was supposed to go out on Chol, it's as if they're the ones that spilled the blood, right?
Does this mean any little cut, or these thorns somehow kill someone?
What?
What is this shvichas damim here? Anyone that got cut?
No, I think it means
someone got killed.
And then usually shvichas damim means killed. Here it's hard to think that people are going to get killed from thorns.
Yeah,
but maybe infection. I don't know. Maybe infection.
Allergic reaction.
Maybe whatever damage happens, it's as if they did it. Because it's the blood is on you. Right, that's talking about Bezdin, right? Because the blood, it's talking about Bezdin. If there's innocent blood spilled, so then it's as if Bezdin did it. Okay. Now, Tosfos says on this that this pasuk is talking about from the parsha of Micah. Yeah. Which is that Micah, you're supposed to put up the second Tosfos down. You're supposed to put up a fence, right? In order on top of a roof, you're supposed to put up a fence in order to make sure that nobody falls off. And if you don't do it, and a guy falls off, right? So then you're not responsible because you didn't do it, but it's as if you spilled the blood, right?
They couldn't do this before Yom Tov or right after Yom Tov.
And why are they only doing it on Yom Tov? So wait, yeah. So we'll
if it's that bad before Yom Tov or before Chol Hamoed, before Chol Hamoed.
So why didn't they do it before?
Yeah.
Yes. Tomorrow's daf, Simon. Tomorrow's daf.
Okay.
It's a fascinating shot what the Gemara says tomorrow. Well, we're gonna, we'll hold you hostage till tomorrow.
Just off the top of my head, I would say that it's a little bit different here. Something that we're going to say is shvichas damim and mala akasav keilu. And if you didn't do it, therefore we're going to be okay with Shvichas Damim now because you didn't do it Erev Yom Tov.
Well, what do you mean? You're doing chol hamoed.
So do it chol hamoed, yeah. Even if you the Mezid didn't do it Erev Yom Tov.
Yeah. I hear. I don't know. The whole thing is a little bit schwer because you're not the one that. See, if you grew the thorns, if it was your thorns that you didn't trim your bushes that are neighboring the street. So I can understand that. Here, you're supposed to be put out there to prevent something. Okay, whatever it is.
But if they don't pop up in a day, it's not like it's like Yontif just
true.
And it's chol hamoed. But look at these thorns. Look at how much they grew in a day and a half. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. It's. And again, it's on Bezdin here. It's on Bezdin. Bottom line is don't ever do anything for the public. Don't take any responsibility because it's a big achrayas. That's what comes out. We had this before once before. You know what? If you do the public and you mess up, you're on the hook. You're on the hook.
Says the Maggid Shir and the posik for all the guys on this thing.
The Erev checker, the Erev checker.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
Now he's the bookie.
Now I'm a bookie, correct. We were doing all these things. Yeah. Anyway, that's why I could do a bookie because why not? I'm doing every other chorus, so we'll do other aveiras too.
You need to write a book. Tzvi, you need to write a book.
Yeah. Anyways, a guy texted me today, Agav, once you brought it up again, a guy texted me, am I allowed to gamble now that gambling is I said, so I text him back, don't let the $3,000 bonus get to you. And the guy just texted me, LOL. Right? He wasn't, I don't think he was expecting that answer. But anyway.
Well, it's the same idea. It's the same idea as if they legalize pot, right? In Indiana, it's illegal. But in Michigan, 15 minutes for me, it's not. So is it now usher? Is it butter? Like what's it?
Okay, Enochanami. Well, it's from a guy, so it's a whole different story. But anyways, okay, let's go back. So what it says, hop ahead, so again, the Mishnah is saying that chol is coming to include all these things, clearing the streets. This is not, how can it be the chol is coming to include? It says it beferish in the Mishnah. They go out on chol hamoed to fix the streets and the mikvahs. So when it says, okay, so what is it coming to include? What is the word chol coming to include? It's not coming to include that you can dig out water sources. It's va'is and kol tzar hiram lasuye mai. So it's coming to include digging. Meaning we thought it was coming to include digging. Then we said, no, it's not. It's coming to include something else. These other, there's the streets and the mikvahs and all that. So we said, but that already says beferish in the Mishnah. So therefore it says that the chol is coming to include that if the rabbin needs you to dig out the streams, then you're allowed to dig out the streams. Fine. Okay, Mitzayin is a kvaris, and another thing that they're allowed to do is that they're allowed to go out on chol hamoed and they can go mark all the kvaris, meaning those that were not marked. So they go out and they mark it up to show so that people. So it's interesting what Rashi says. The whole concern is for truma. Well, like, what's the big deal if a guy steps on a grave, right? So again, it's for the kohanim. He doesn't say kohanim, Rashi, but it's for the kohanim that are eating truma. Right? I mean, even if a kohen becomes tummy, so we have to go send people out on chol hamoed to mark graves. So the kohen botches it up. My mistake. Okay, so he did. So then he'll become tummy, right? So, but I guess because we don't want all the truma to get messed up. That seems the way Rashi's saying it. Yeah. That's what it's saying. Yeah. Fine. So let's see. So the Gemara is going to go through, I think it's 9 different sources why you have to mark kvarim bichlal. So I'm going to Shimon Pazi. Remez letzi and kvaris minatarim minayin. What is the remez that you need to mark kvarim, right? So now the question is, does that mean that if we're going to bring psukim, that means it's a deraisa to make a gravestone? All right. So that's a shiloh. That's a machlokes rishonim. whether it's a mitzvah d'oraisa to mark a grave or not. Right? Fine. So let's see.
Is it a grave or a cemetery?
So well, if it's within a cemetery, then it's just a cemetery. That's it. You would just need to mark the outside. The Kohen just joined. Okay.
Not all the sources are from the Torah.
That's true, but you have the shaila is the ones that make it from the Torah. So does that mean that it's the rice or not? But anyway, so if it's just a cemetery, so each grave doesn't have to be marked individually. We're talking about where you have a random place that somebody was buried. So now is it a rice or not? Okay. So Tamalaymer. So it says you can't get more farish than that. It says you're going to see the bones of a person, and you're going to have to build a tzion over there.
The rest of the pasuk though is a little bit counterintuitive.
Why?
That tzion was only ad boy. What was it? Ad kavro
guy. Right.
Only until he gets buried. Because the live body needs a tzion. I mean, not a live body, an open
whatever,
body.
A body. Right.
Yeah.
But the question is, after it's buried, it's going to also mean
mashma from the pasuk, not.
Yeah. Could be. I hear. So Amar Ravina the Ravashi Hamakame the Lesi Yecheskel Man Amar. So it's always an interesting question. So Yecheskel, so the pasuk, the Gemara just says, what's the source? It brings a pasuk in Yecheskel. Good. So and before Yecheskel, what was the source? So Gemara says, well, the Tameich, and according to you, Hadamar of Chista, Davar Zem Mitaras Moshe Rabbeinu Loi Lamdu. This thing that we didn't learn it from Moshe. We learned it from Yecheskel ben Buzi. Kol ben Necher Aral Lei v'Aral Basar Lo Yavei Al Mikdashai. That the Sharseni is taken out because it's not in the pasuk, right? That's why it's parentheses. So anybody who is an oral who doesn't have a bris cannot come to the base of Mikdash, and that's a pasuk in Yecheskel, which we know we paskin like that. So before Yecheskel said this, who said that a kohen that doesn't have a bris can't come into the base of Mikdash? Right? It was like and Yecheskel put it onto a pasuk. That's what he did by bris. It's a loch l'mashem Sinai that you would need to mark a grave, and came along Yecheskel and he put it onto the pasuk. Right?
It's an interesting Russian for something that's part of a direct nevuah. The Asi Yecheskel, the Asmacha Akra.
Yeah.
The pasuk begins Kayamar Hashem. The Asmacha Akra.
Okay. I hear. Now, this is interesting here. What is the case of a kohen who's an oral? Right? So Rashi says that his brothers died because of bris, and then nobody wanted to give the right. We know that the din is that if two boys die from a milah, we had this, I think, in Shabbos. So then the third, what's it called? Is it hemophilia? Is it hemophilia?
Yes.
Right, that the blood, right? So the blood doesn't clot. Thank you, the doctors here. Yeah. So right, so the blood doesn't clot. What do you say?
It's not called a hematoma?
Well, a hematoma is a bleeding.
That's a bruise.
Bleeding, right? That's right. But so anyways, so the brothers died, so they don't want to give them a bris. They're afraid they're gonna die. Right? So some want to be medayik in the Rashi, v'loy ratzu lemuloi. Sheyireim pen yamas gam hu ke'echab lo yavei, so then he can't come in. Sounds like it's their option, right? They decided on their own. They have nerves, right? And that would be enough, right? It's an interesting lashon that Rashi is saying that they okay, we don't want them, we're afraid. Fine. That back in the Gemara, Amar mehachav tamei yikra. And he's going to call Tomei. Tuma kairaloi v'aimeres loi prosh. Tuma is calling out and telling you to stay away. The Chayin Amar Rabbi Uziel Barbaria, the Rabbi Uziel Rabbah. The Rabbi Uziel, the grandson of Rabbi Uziel Rabbah. I guess he's named after his grandfather. Yeah? So Tuma kairaloi v'aimeres loi prosh. Tuma is calling out and saying, stay away. So what it says, but you need this for a different pasuk. Look at the Tani, we need it for what it says in the rise of a Tamei Yikra. That's Tzarech Laidia Tzari L'Rabim, V'Rabim V'Akshan L'Rachim. This is talking about somebody who has tzaras. So you have to, the person who has tzaras is supposed to call out to his friends that they should daven for him. Right, so that's what Tamei Yikra is. Imkain Lichtas, the one answers Imkain Lichtas of Tamei Yikra. It just has to say one word Tamei. My Vitame Tame. Why does it need to say two Tame? Shamas Mina Tarti. So we learn out two things. One, that it's Saras, that you have to mark graves, and the other one is that it's somebody who has Saras is supposed to call out to his friends to daven to him. Fine. That's fairly straightforward. You don't want to put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. That's because you don't want people carrying tyrus and truma to go on the grave. Papa Amar, Sailu Panu Darach. Right, go move, clear the way for so that people don't have to be afraid of tumah. Rav Chinina Amar Herimu Michshol Midarachami. Move Michshol from my way, from the ways from my nation. Rabbi Shua Bereder Rav Idi Amar. I'm going to let you know that the way you should go. Is that this week's parsha? Or the last week's parsha? I don't know. Yeah. You should make them be careful from their tumas. You have to make a shmira to my shmira. So that means that, which means you're supposed to put the marker down so nobody ends up becoming tummy. Ravina Amar, Visham derech erenu b'yesha elikim. Right? The sum, I'm sorry, not Visham, we mixed, that's what we're going to dash it. The sum, and somebody who puts on the derech, I'm going to show him that Hashem is going to save him. Right? So what are you putting down? You're putting down a tzion, a marker to let people know that they can't walk there. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Now we get a little look at it. So kol hasam or chaysa. Anybody who Hasham, I'm sorry, I read it backwards. The first one was Sam, this one is Sham. And we're saying that whoever evaluates his ways, he's going to be saved by Hashem. Shenemar, v'sam derech, al tikri v'sam, elav v'sham derech, arena b'yesh elikim. Right? Fine. So basically what it means to say with this is that you're supposed to evaluate which way you're supposed to go. You think about, okay, should I go on to learn at night, or should I go, I don't know, play ball or gamble or whatever it is, right? So if you evaluate what the proper thing is to do, so then that's you're going to be saved from Hashem. Rav Yanai Havaleh, who told me that Rav Yanai had a Talmud, the chol Yomi have a makshile. He would ask him questions every single day. The Shabbos of the Regila lo have a makshile, but on Shabbos of Yom Tif, which there's a much bigger crowd, then he didn't ask any questions. Right, on Talmud Beis, and Kari Alei, and he called him, Rav Yanai called him, B'sham derech harenu b'yesh elikim. If he evaluates his ways and he's going to show him, then he's going to have a Yeshua from Hashem, which Rashi says he knew when to ask questions and when not. Right, so some say he didn't want to try and ask a question in front of a lot of people, and Rav Yanai didn't know the answer, and he'd be embarrassed. Meaning, so you got to know when to ask questions and when not. That's what the Gemara is learning from that. Okay, now we get into graves for the rest of the daf. There was one Indian. Okay, let's see this first, and then we get to Torah Rabban. A mitzayanin. So you don't have to make a what do you call it? A stone or a mark, right? Loi al kizayis min hameis. Not on a kazayas, only if it's a kazayas. If it's only a kazayas from a mace, you don't need to mark anything. V'lo al etzem kisayra, and not on a bone the size of a piece of barley. Right? V'lo al davar she'ein matama b'oil, and not on anything that becomes tummy from an oil. But you
not
do
on
have
something which does not become tummy b'oil.
On a davar she'ein matama b'oil, that is not. Yes. Thank you. That on something that is not matama b'oil. Al matzayin and al shedra al gugailas, but you do make a marker. How is that? Yeah, you do. You make a tzion, right? And in case anybody didn't notice, they call it the tzion of a rebbe, right? The tzion. That's where this comes from. Al shedra al gugailas. If you have the whole spinal cord, and on the gugailas is the skull. That you will have to make a marker. Al roiv binyan, if it's roiv of the the bones of the body, roiv minyan, and I'm sorry, the roiv binyan is roiv of the skeleton, right? If it has the majority of the skeleton there, then you need to make a marker, and roiv minyan, and if it's roiv of the bones, then have a mace, then you have to. Vein mitzayin al havadois, and you don't make a marker for anything that's vadai. If it's a vadai mace, you don't have to, because meaning if everybody in town knows that somebody's buried right there, then there's no reason to mark it off. I don't know what hurts, but you don't have to. Hamatzayin al asfekas, but when you're not sure, then you have to mark it off. Ve'elu en asfekas, and how do you define sfekas? Schachos uperois ubeis hapras. So schachos means like a sukkah, right? So if you have a field and there was like a sukkah there, so it could very well be that's a place that people bury, buried under a tree, right? So that's what people do. And price is anything that sticks out, and Beis Hapras, is where you know there was a grave in the field and it was plowed over. What are you saying?
Talking about Sveikas and Vadois of a mace. I remember, 3-4 weeks ago, someone sent me a picture or a little clip of a terrorist attack in Eretz Yisrael where a couple of Yidden were stabbed and the terrorist was shot. And they were rinsing away a lot of blood. And they had to send the clarification that all the blood that they were rinsing away was the Arabs, not the Yidden. The Yidden they found. They got that. Because they can't rinse away. They have to be buried. So that's Allah Sfekas, you have to be Mitzayim.
I hear. Oh, very good. So that's, but that's really not marking. That's where they were just cleaning it.
No, but they had to send out an enforcing message to tell everyone that it wasn't Yiddish blood.
What does Mitzayim mean? He said, "I'll say it to be Mitzayim." What does Mitzayim mean?
Seeing to mark it off.
Okay.
When it's a suffix, you got to mark it off.
Didn't we have a Gemara in Brachas that if someone's choshed, you have to explain?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm saying here we don't know. We just don't know if there's a grave there. That's all. We just don't know. There's a suffix, so you got to mark it. So that's meaning if everybody knows in town where the grave is, let's say under a certain tree, everybody knows, this and this fellow was buried there. Okay, so then you don't have to mark it off because everybody in town knows it, right? But if it's a suffix, then you do have to. Okay, so then it says, "Ve'en mamidin tzion."
That's what you were saying, and that's where we get tzion from.
Yes, 100%. I know you think it's like this holy tzion means mamish,
right? Like the place to be and David and whatever it is. No,
I'm sure there's a vart. But the tzion just means it's a tzion. It's a marker. That's what it is.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry for the disappointment. Fine. Fine by me then tzion b'makam tuma, and we don't put a tzion in a makam tuma. Shaloi lahafsed as a tyrus, because you don't want to lose tyrus, right? Meaning what it's saying here is you don't want to put, if you put the graves, the stone or the marker, see then a lot of times they just put some cement down. I don't know, they didn't have cement, sid, right down on top of the grave. But if you did it right on top of the grave, then the person who's walking may not see it until it's too late, right? He's walking and then he puts his foot down and says, "Oh, I just stepped on a grave." Right? So you don't put it only directly on top of the grave, you move it away a little bit, right? So that this won't happen. And you don't go too far away. You don't want to take away from Eretz Yisrael either, because if you move it too far away, then people are not going to step. You're taking away, it's quite an interesting thing. You're taking away part of the land of Eretz Yisrael because nobody's going to go there, right? Because people will go there. I guess Israelim that don't mind being tummy, but a lot of other people are not going to walk there. So we don't want to take away any land of Eretz Yisrael for no reason.
Why isn't this a problem with people from here going to be buried in Har Menuchos, things like that?
What does that do with this?
Away from Eretz Yisrael.
You're taking away.
Just being buried there. This is what it just said here.
I'm saying, but it's not going to be.
That's what here you're taking away Shalai Tzara because you decide to put the marker at the foot.
Why is it Tzara?
Well, somebody's going to be buried there. Somebody's going to be buried there.
Well, that's far as cyclical. That doesn't work.
What do you mean?
Doesn't have to be an American. Someone from Kutzlar, it's going to be buried there. Why?
I'm just saying, but somebody's going. It's in a Beis Hapras. Nobody's doing anything with it.
Yeah, so some Israeli will be buried there, whoever it might be. Now you're going to have to expand when that is.
We're not going to have this fight again.
According to
Gershon,
you,
you want to have this fight again about the death?
According to you, Gershon, so bury everybody in the West Bank. Not the West Bank, whatever.
Further out, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. All right. A new chumrah.
I'm saying, where does this far end?
Where is Reb Aaron when we need him?
Yeah, the Satmars would love that.
He's in Israel. He's in Israel.
He's in Israel of all places. All right. Anyway, fine. So those are all the different places that you make the markers. So Kizayis, Naran Gemara goes through. Kizayis been a mace in matam of oil. A Kizay, how come you don't have to make a tzion for a Kizayis from a mace? It's not matam of oil. But tan yortznan elu shematamin ba'oil. Kizayis been a mace. Right? So this is a Kizayis been a mace, and a kohen steps over it, so he's going to become tummy. So why are you saying that you don't need to mark it? A very interesting teretz. We're talking about an exact kizayis. The saif michser chaser. What happens? It's going to shrink up or shrink down, whatever. It's going to shrink, right? Which means once it shrinks, it's no longer matama. So what's going to happen? Let's say you put the marker there now because it's the exact size of a kizayis. So now you put a marker there, and then forever and ever, anybody who steps over it by mistake is going to end up not eating truma or burning the truma or whatever it is, when really it's only for a small amount of time. Let's say for a week. I don't know how long it takes to shrink. Let's say a week, 2 weeks, it shrinks. And then, so we'd rather make no marker and matama things for 2 weeks. And then to the rest of the life, nobody's going to be matama. Right? The saif michser chaser. So Gemara says, mutav yisrafu alav truma ukachim lafisha. We'd rather we're going to think for the long term. We'd rather burn truma and kachim for an hour, which just doesn't mean an hour, but it means whatever amount of time. I don't know what exactly that time is. But you don't, and you're not going to end up burning things forever, right? So again, we're taking the long-term outlook versus the short-term outlook. If we're going to put a marker there, then for the rest of till the end of life, till the end of the world, anybody who by mistake steps over it's going to be tummy, even though they're really not, because it's no longer a kizayis. So we'd rather just not mark it. And then for the next, let's say, week, anybody who steps there by mistake is going to become tummy, right? And then after that, there's no reason to mark it, right? Which again, so I don't understand why for that week they can't, hire somebody to sit there in a chair and tell everybody, hey, stay away from here.
Why can't they take someone to take it to a Beis Hapras and rebury it? Is it so bad to move it?
I don't know. I mean, you could ask that on all these things. If
it's a whole mace, if it's a minion or a binion, then you leave them. That's what they asked on Rabbi Kiva. We have that in Erevin.
Right. So, okay, I don't know.
Zayas, just move it.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear. Okay. So I don't know, but I can't understand this whole thing exactly, but fine. Fine. So what are the sveikas? Schachos uperois, if you have a sukkah, right? Like from branches. And perois is things that are sticking out of the wall. Schachos, what's a schachos? Ilan amesach ala oretz. It's a tree that's hanging over the ground. Perois is avon and pruas ayotzman together. You have, sometimes their fences were not perfect. They're cement fences. So sometimes you had a piece of stone sticking out. So people would bury under that. Beis Hapras. So what's a Beis Hapras? It's not a chayrish as a kever. If there was somebody buried in a field, and then somebody plowed the whole field. So now they probably chopped up this body and moved it. It went all over the field. So that whole field, Kayin can't go into. The kamahu oisa. Malay mana mea ama. It makes one mana, which is one length of what a plow can make, a furrow, by 100 amas. That's how far you have to be worried that the grave would spread. Beis Hapras mi metama ba'oil. So Gemara says, and as a Beis Hapras tame ba'oil. V'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. We had this in Pesachim and Afeach Adam Beis Hapras ba'oil. Let's say somebody's going to bring the carbon pesach, and he's got this field which they told him, by the way, you can't go in that field because a mace was plowed there and the whole field is tummy. So what you can do is you go on your knees and you blow it till you blow away the top layer, and then you'll see that there's no bones there, and then he could walk. It's probably take quite a long time to get across this field, but that's what you're allowed to do. Now, for Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ami B'Shmei Ulam or Beis Hapras Shenida Shtar, and he says a Beis Hapras that was stepped on by many people, it's tar, right? So whatever it is, you see that the Beis Hapras were not worried about tumas oil. Otherwise, how would the kohen ever step in there? He's going to be an oil over the mace. Samara Papa like Kasha, Kampasada Shava kever. One is talking about a field that an actual grave was lost there, and we don't know where it is. And Kampasada Shenechrash kever. And the other one is where there was a kever there, but it got plowed. So that doesn't need to have a tzion, because there's no tumas oil. So there's only tumas oil if you lose the grave somewhere in the field. You have no idea where it is. So I'm going to ask, and is a field that a kever was plowed there, is that called a Beis Hapras? Right? I'm sorry, the opposite. I said the play that was plowed, not plowed. Is a field that you just lost a mace called Beis Hapras. A field that the mace was plowed over is a problem, but not if you just lose a grave. So Gemara says, yes, Tanan, and we learned in the Mishnah, Shloisha Beis Hapras, and there are 3 Beis Hapras. Sadeh Shenever Kever, a field that you just lost the grave there, Sadeh Shenever Kever, or a field that the kever was plowed there, Sadeh V'stei Beichen, and a field of crying. What does that mean? My stay beichen. What is a field of crying? Rabbi Shua Rav Mishmei Deula Amar Sadeh Shemaftirin B'Mason. That's like the field. That's like the outside of the funeral home where everybody, says goodbye to the mason, and then they go. Most people don't attend the burial, right? So they say goodbye to the mace outside the funeral home. That's where there's a lot of crying, and then 10 people or whatever go to the burial. So the Gemara is saying that's called the field of crying. So that's called the Beis Hapras. Now, why are we concerned that there's a mace there? For time amai, what's the reason? This might be a little bit strange. Amar Avimi, Mishum Yiyush Bailim Nogova. It's because the owners, the Bailim, gave up on this. Now, what does this mean? So Rashi says, meaning this is the place where the mason were brought from far away. And since there's so many people tumbling around there, maybe a limb of the mace fell off because the mace has been dead for a while, and then they just forgot it there. Right? So since this field is dealing with so many dead bodies, it could be that a piece of a limb was forgotten there, and everybody thought everybody else is taking it, and they just ended up leaving it there. So we're concerned that maybe that field has tumah in it. So a kohen should stay away from a field that's field that's outside the funeral home. Yeah. Fine.
Yeah, Simon, unless he has a baby with him.
Unless he needs to move the baby with the bread. There you go. That's been a while since we talked about that one.
Yeah, I was thinking it's about time,
Yeah. So the sada shenever kever loy b'yitzion. So if you have a sada that they plowed a dead body and it doesn't need a tzion, but Tanya matzah sada b'tzion is when you do a mativa. If you found a field that has a tzion in it, but you have no idea why, right? So what do you do? So if there's trees in it, you do a shenefesh kever. Then you know that the kever was plowed, right? So because they're going to plow it for the trees, yeah. So then what are you going to do? So you're allowed to go do this blowing thing, and then you'll know. But if it doesn't have trees, we do a shava kever. Then you know that the reason why there's a marker there is because it's to let everybody know that somewhere in this field there's a kever lost, and the kohen shouldn't go in there. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Achie Sham Zaken or Talmud, right? Until you have either a Zaken or a Talmud, right? Who could say what exactly happened to this field. Not everybody's a bucky, right? But whatever it is, what do you see from this brisa? That they do put a tzion in a field that even has a grave plowed. There we're talking about that the field it's talking about a field where a mace was lost, and then they marked it, and then yesh ba'ilanos, and if there's trees there, then you know that there was a kever plowed over. Ain ba'ilanos, but if there's no trees, we do a shava kever, and you know that it was lost there. So it says maybe the trees are on the inside and the kever is on the outside, right? So and therefore there's going to be no plowing. Kedamar Ula. So my answer is like Ula said, we're saying where the trees are on the outside. So to here the trees are on the outside. So the trees are not, the mace is not going to be outside the trees. The mace is going to be on the inside. So then the Gemara says, maybe the tumah is on the outside and the trees are on the inside. So we say, no, it's talking about with misuvachim. It's where the trees are all mixed up. Meaning there's not just straight trees all around the field. There's all different types of trees everywhere. Not different types of trees, but it's like haphazard, right? So fine. And some say, no, we're not worried because we're not going to make a tzion further away from the graves, to not make Eretz Yisrael lost, right? And so therefore we're going to know that they're going to put the trees near the kevarim, or the kevarim near the trees, so that they take away less land of Eretz Yisrael, right? So we know that the tzion is near the trees. So the assumption is that the grave was plowed, and therefore you have to figure out how to get through it with blowing, right? Okay, so then there was one interesting shaila from Rav Shlomo Kluger. I heard it from this fellow that sends out a Daf Ian thing from Lakewood. I think Rabbi Katz, where Rav Shlomo Kluger had a shaila. Can a scientist keep a piece of a body in his house that he's either working on, put in formaldehyde or whatever it is? Is he allowed to keep it in his house? So, okay, the obvious question is Tumas oil, if a kohen happens to come in his house. But then he said, could be there's a mitzvah d'oraisa to mark a grave, even a kizayis, right? We just learned there's a kizayis. You have to mark it. So maybe the guy could be mevatel a mitzvah d'oraisa of not marking off the grave, right? I don't remember what the answer was, but anyways, that was the interesting shaila. Okay, have yourselves a good night, everybody.
Happens to be in Uman. There's an old grave by the old cemetery that they even have a building over it, and they mark it where the grave was, where the burial is. Is that
I'm
what
saying,
you're
isn't what do you mean? You're supposed to mark.
There's no what?
You're supposed to mark the grave.
No, but you were saying before only when it's a field, meaning that the Gemara was talking about when it's a field, or it's anytime there's a grave.
Anytime there's a grave.
No, it's not a grave anymore. I'm saying it's plowed over and there's a building on it.
You mean like all those parking lots in Europe? The Polish built over.
Yeah, I'm just saying the 50,000 whatever kids got murdered there, whatever, I don't remember, and they plowed over it. It's a field. They built a building over it.
That's a vadai. That definitely needs to see it.
No, because there's no expert. There's no expert that can tell us there's a grave there.
What do you mean? If we know where the spot was, where they were shot and buried, we know there was a kever there.
How?
Well, this is Suffolk. This is all Suffolk.
Are we talking about?
How can you know if they're buried there?
Are we talking about body parts? Or are we talking about body parts of a mace at the end?
Of a mace.
Of a mace.
Oh, you mean stomachs? There was amputation or something?
Yeah, like let's say you walk into a dentist's office, he's got teeth hanging out in the office.
I mean the shaila from Shlomo Kluger.
Yeah, or let's say a mile. You know, you're at a bris milah, you have a piece of milah.
Right. So that needs to be a kazayis.
So that doesn't need kavura anyway. Either way, the arla.
They all bury it. All the Moelim bury
it doesn't need it. It doesn't need it.
Because it's not a limb, right? It's not a limb. It's just fat.
It's not an aveira. Yeah. My grandfather was buried in 2 different places.
Well,
the leg amputated.
It's amazing.
So you know what? Somebody once asked me. They had what do you call it taken out?
Appendix.
So that's not big enough to be buried.
Spleen.
They burn most of that stuff.
Is that what they do with it?
If it's removed because of an appendix or a spleen or something, they burn it. They don't bury it.
It's infectious.
It's infectious for the most part.
I hear.
You're not taking out a healthy spleen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
We'll have their intestines, some of the intestines.
But it's also the same thing.
Actually, talking about taking out a healthy spleen, David HaMelech did it with his runners. It's 600 runners. He took out all their spleens so they could run faster.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways. All right. Fine.
Yeah. Shikayach.
It's getting a little more interesting after this, so I hope.
This is not uninteresting.
It's not exactly, you know what I mean?
This stuff is
Megillah.
I love this stuff.
Yeah.
I love this stuff. I love that we're talking about fields and plants and stuff. Hey, this is great.
I guess
what did by the way
they like.
What did Rabbi Yehuda mean by Achi Yeshom Zaken et Talmud? Like the Arizal?
What do you mean like the Arizal?
He went around saying who's kfarim aware, what's a kever, what's not a kever.
So if you look in the next line, the Gemara's Rashi, the next Gemara, Rashi says that, I think it's in that Gemara, that a Talmud Chacham has to know what's going on in town.
Talmud Bakiyu, Kalmili Damasa Ale Ramya.
Another word for hacker.
Yeah. Well, he's a Talmud Chacham. That's what we're talking about.
I understand, but you know what I'm saying.
Talmud Chacham has to be a hacker.
Basically. That's what it says. Yeah. They know what's going on.
It's also a lashon of Bekiyas. It doesn't mean hacking. It means they actually know the reality of what's going on.
I understand.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I gotta sign off. Side.
Shikaya.
Have a good night.
Right. What's going on, Simon?
Nothing.
Why do you look like you're sitting in a bunker somewhere?
I'm sitting in my basement, my boiler room.
Was it built as a bunker?
No, it's the basement. Look, hold on.
Yeah, I see the roof now. Yeah.
But there's like an indent, so I put up some shelves and there's the
very nice.
Yeah.
Have you seen a man cave?
Yeah, right. My wife has basically the same thing on the other side.
That's great.
But the kids play down here. What do you call it? Parrot